is one of the guys, Marius from our team, who built that. And we increased our revenue by $60,000 in 2 weeks.
Which are the three departments within a company that request workflows or little apps for marketing, for sales, for operations, finance?
Yeah, we see pretty clearly this is where the biggest gains are.
AI tools creating and replicating existing SaaS. Where do you think the VC money is going to be in 2026?
A lot of investor money will go lost. But at the end of the day, investors need to remember that just invest in.
Milo, welcome. Going straight forward, you have had a pretty long experience helping other founders building businesses, especially in the commercial side of things. You've been involved in over 5 or 6 companies as a co-founder, exited a few, and also been acquired there. Why don't you give us 5 cents of what have you gone through in the past, 6, 7 years that brought you where you are today?
So I really started when I was like 15, actually earlier than that, but around the age of 15, I was really curious about like, how can I make my own money? That wasn't a job. And it actually started, my first real thing was like when I was 13. I became like a package delivery guy for my dad, and he would pay me per package, which wasn't based on time, which I've found really interesting. Like I didn't want to make an hourly rate. I wanted to figure out like, how can I get paid outside of time? Then when I was 15, I was flipping road bikes. When I was 16, I had a barbershop at my boarding school. When I was 17, I started a fashion brand and grew that internationally, sold over 1,000 products worldwide, and then eventually sold it to a partner. And then I started my first my first digital business, which was a financial media company. And I would say this is where my love for networking really began, because unintentionally, I was growing my media company by interviewing big founders in the industry. So it became my mission to get in the room with every founder that had a big audience. And what I found at the time, that a lot of these founders, they just wanted to have their story heard. So I was the one who told their story in a very human way. And by doing that, I was able to tap into their audiences. As a result, I was able to grow my own audience on our publication. And basically the first 6 months, I did nothing but networking. And then the day we started monetizing, we had cash flow from basically the day one we started selling. Then fast forward a year or two is when all of my networking new businesses. So I would often meet cool people. I would introduce people to each other. Those people would want to start businesses together. Often they would ask me for help, like finding the first customer or the first investor, or just getting from 0 to 1. And I would spend sometimes just a few months getting everything ready, sometimes putting in a seed check, sometimes just doing all the paperwork. And as a result, I would get invited to be on the cap table. I did this for 5 companies in total, and then did that for quite a few years. Throughout the 5 companies, we raised roughly $10 million. We were serving tens of thousands of customers, and yeah. But then last year in 2024, my wife's dad had a stroke. So she had to go stay with him abroad for 3 months. We had just moved to a new city, and we didn't have a kindergarten yet. And I was a full-time dad with 5 businesses, and that was just too much. So I took a decision to back out of, so basically sell my shares in 3 of the businesses, and coincidentally I had buyers ready for 2 of them. Then I had about half a year of just focusing on my friends and family, and then me being an entrepreneur, I want to do my next thing. So in December last year, I wanted to start my next thing. I wasn't sure what, but I knew that I wanted to this time to start by myself, see how far I could get with just me and the AI tools available. And I started documenting the journey online. specifically on LinkedIn, where I put out this mission statement where I wanted to build a $1 million solo business. This resonated with a lot of people, I think, and a lot of people were listening to the tool recommendations I made. And eventually I found DataButton, which was an AI developer for founders, basically. And I just could not shut up about it because it was that good. If you ever had a business, you know how building software is. Like, you have to hire developers, you have to, like, the iteration and the feedback loop is very slow compared to what we now know as vibe coding. So my post about that reached about 1 million people in 3 weeks. And then the founders of DataButton basically reached out to me and asked if I wanted to join. And that's how I decided to join an AI startup instead of starting my next startup. And then, yeah, there's happened a hell of a lot of things since then.
Quick break. I wanted to thank you for showing up to the Agentic Project, the podcast where Danny, my co-host, and I interview founders building the latest AI tools in the space. This podcast wouldn't be possible without flowhawk.com, the AI agency that Danny and I run in order to help teams optimize their operations. If you think that your team could have more efficient operations, go to flowhawk.com. Okay, let's keep going with the podcast. There's a lot to process in this answer here. I want to get back a little bit to when you were 15. You were like most of guys when they are 15, they're either playing football or out smoking cigarettes on their break or talking to girls or whatever. You already started your first business, age of 17, another one, age 18, another one that goes international. What was happening there? Are any of your parents entrepreneurial? Do you have this inherited from home or did it come on its own?
Yeah, I think my dad was always an entrepreneur. He would always start new things. So I think that's where I got it from. My mom is very different. She likes to just have a stable job with a stable income, knowing she can take 2 weeks of vacation per year. I'm much more like my dad, where I don't really care about the money. I just care about doing something that I feel great about. So yeah, it's never been like that. I never thrived in a job. Like when I was teenager, I had this, I would call it a substitute job, where I would substitute my entrepreneurship with maybe 1 or 2 days a week where I would be working a traditional job. And I would never stay anywhere more than 3 months. Like, I would just grow tired of it, and then I would much rather spend my time building something. Yeah.
Has this changed now that you're actually having a regular job, I would
Yeah.
say, but
I
also
mean,
in an AI startup? I wouldn't be brave enough to say it's a regular job. So what has changed in the Milo of today working for Riff, right? Formerly DataButton, but now Riff. What has changed then?
yeah, I think it was a bit of a difficult decision because I was saying goodbye to my life as a founder, but at the same time, this was a piece of software that I had never felt this excited about anything. Like, at the time I was just talking about what I used in my business, and it was like I was just so excited about it. It almost felt talking about my own startup in a way, and that just amplified when I actually joined. It doesn't feel like a job. It feels like my own startup. I wake up at 7 in the morning, and the first thing I do is want to check on the team, check on the customers, and literally the last thing before I go to bed. And I don't think if this was just a job, I would be, I would put down my phone at 4 p.m. and say that's it. But I have so much fun with our customers. So it really feels like my own startup.
So like the dream employee right there.
Actually, just before we get into Riff, you are saying that you were sharing your journey on public, you were building on public, and you were sharing all these different tools that you were finding useful for you. We have also been there. Like, we built a directory where we were trying to put all the AI agents that we were finding that were useful. And actually, to be honest, it was super difficult to find good ones. So there are plenty of there. You you could find an AI agent for almost anything, but at the end of the day, it's super hard to really find an AI agent that actually provides value. Leaving Riff out of the discussion, what are the top 3 tools that you have found during this last year that were actually useful for you?
I can run you through the journey I had as someone looking for the tools I wanted to use. It started in December, where I found some tool. Like, it was in today's standard, it almost felt like it was 20 years old. But it had the idea of turning words into software. And I was able to build a snake game, and that alone got me super intrigued. I don't even remember the name of it. It was some kind of open source thing. But researching that concept of turning words into software is how I found eventually Lovable. And that was back in February. At the time, it had a lot of limitations. I think a lot of users can attest to that. And I was constantly looking for new and better tools. Eventually, I found Bolt.new. But every time I found a new tool, there would be some new problem with that tool that I didn't face with another tool, or there would be some kind of drawback. For example, in Lovable, it was like you had to optimize, because it's tokens based on messages or credits based on messages. You had to optimize your message. You had to give it so much information in one message that it drowned the LLM. In Bolt, the issue was that the first prompt would get you an entire landing page full of everything you need. But second prompt got you a few things. And then by the time you reached prompt number 20, the app was so big that like the Bolt was no longer able to keep up, because it had to read everything to understand every time you send it a message. And then at some point you could barely send a message and say, change the color of the text. That's how hard it was. It just messed up everything. And then researching Bolt, I found a open source project called bolt.diy, which was an open source version of Bolt, where developers had a little bit more freedom to actually implement more models and features based on feedback and so on. But I'm not technical, and this program ran on your computer. So that was another obstacle. And then eventually I found DataButton, which introduced, at the time, way ahead of its time, like way ahead of all the competition, because they had everything that Lovable and Replit has just launched. They had the agent, which was an autonomous developer where you could just ask it one thing, and then it would go and develop for 15 minutes. And then you could come back and check on what it did. And it also had integrated authentication and database, which is something that all the competitors has been copied ever since. So in a way, and the task-based system, like the way that DataButton was turning a prompt into a task, and the task itself was written as if it was a developer that was instructing itself. I didn't need to be a developer to write good prompts. I just had to be able to explain what I wanted. And then the task would instruct the agent on what to do and actually carry through one step at a time until it was done. So yeah, that's the journey. And yeah.
Super cool. I can relate a lot with your history, because actually I also tried to build something with Bolt, and it happened exactly the same. I even posted a tweet when it just launched, and they even refund me like a lot of credits, but even with all those credits that they were giving away for free, it was almost impossible to proceed. So actually, I'm a developer myself, and when I tried Bolt at that time, I thought, okay, these vibe coding apps are cool, or these vibe coding builders are cool, but you cannot put this into production. And at that time, I was feeling very safe. But then actually we came up with DataButton, we spoke to Martin, and we were seeing that you guys are actually building apps that can go into production. And the good thing that you have is that you introduce this service human that actually not the other apps are doing, like Lovable, or I'm not sure if they do it now, but at that point you were the only ones doing this, that if you get stuck, you can talk to a human, and this human will try to fix whatever is wrong to make sure this app goes to production. The moment I noticed that, I thought, man, these guys are really closing the gap between developers that can actually code themselves whatever they want, and they can also bring things to production, and these Vive coders that were having this obstacle. So now, here what I see is that you're really closing the gap. Now, when I'm developing, the one thing that is slowing me down is that I have to manually review everything that Cloud Code is giving me, because I'm using Cloud Code a lot and it's super good, but still you have to review it. But so my question here is, and more looking into the future, are you guys working on building like a automated QA, like automated quality assurance, to decrease or to maybe remove this human out of this loop of reviewing code? Because if you do this, you're actually like maybe you could really close the gap immediately.
Yeah, so we introduced a version of this already back in May, where our agent was able to read the code and find bugs that was hidden and actually tell you to fix it once in a while. We've since then introduced automatic security audits, which is also new in Riff. But I actually want to give a bit of a background information on how we got from when I joined to where we are today. So when I joined, having been a founder my whole life, like you wear a lot of hats, and we were really struggling to figure out like, what is my role? We didn't know what my role is. We just knew that we wanted to work together. We landed on growth because growth is a lot of things. You can do growth on sales, marketing, product, partnerships, referral, anything. And that's really where I like to work. And then the second thing that I like to do is, as I mentioned earlier, networking. So talking to customers and bringing back feedback to the team. So what I do a lot today and have done since the beginning is actually just talk to customers, figure out what are some pain points and how can we solve it? How can we make the product better? And one of the first projects that I took on when I joined was figuring out what is the distribution of customer success among our user groups. We had 2 user groups. So we had one of them was the SaaS builders, the same who build on Lovable and Bold. And then we had internal tools builders, which is people who work at a job who build tools for work. And looking at the 2 customer segments, when I strictly look at customer success, meaning I don't care about how much we make per customer, I don't care about anything else. I'm just looking at, is the customer happy, and are they making things that make them think that they're successful building. For SaaS builders, this meant that a lot of these customers were they were non-technical people building very large and complex applications, because when you're a founder, you have a lot of ideas. And when you've just been given an AI developer who can do anything for you, and with AI just saying, yes, let's do it, you very fast run into issues with a large application and a non-technical person. So already there, we saw a lot of red flags on the SaaS builders. And this wasn't just the case on DataButton. This was the case on all the other tools as well, because these SaaS founders, they jump from tool to tool, looking for small improvements, hoping that another tool will solve their problem. Success rate in SaaS builders was about 5 to 10%, meaning our definition of customer success is an app built and an app used. Because if you don't build your app, what's the point? And if you don't use your app, what's the point? With SaaS builders, only 5 to 10% were actually launching apps, and even fewer were making revenue. The other customer segment was the internal tools builders. And what we saw here is that these people build small tools that solve a real problem at work. They're easy to build. And because they're easy to build, they build a lot of them. And every tool they build inspires the next tool. They also use the company money so they can stay subscribed for longer. And customer success in this customer segment was night and day difference. So like 90 to 95%. I presented this hypothesis to the team, and obviously everyone was skeptical, including myself. I didn't really believe, is it really that significant? And the problem we had is that at that time, 70% of our customers were SaaS builders. So if we were going to go all in on customer success, we would be saying goodbye to 70% of our revenue. But eventually, we realized that we have to focus on building successful customers, because without it, we will have a lot of growth and then we'll have a lot of churn and not a lot of happy customers. So we made a decision around June to build a version of DataButton at the time that was optimized for internal tools. And how this started actually is because I was doing a lot of demos at the time. I would take a call with someone. They would tell me they would have a problem at work, and I would build that tool in front of them. And by 35 minutes, I would have a working tool that I could send to them. And this became like the one shot. Like I was able to one shot tools without any issues. Just build it, integrate, build the front end, build the back end, everything, push it out. And then it worked, and then demoed it in front of them. And then we were like, okay, how can we do this for every customer without, so we were wondering like, how can we make every customer one shot their tools as well? Where you just, instead of having to talk to an AI agent for hours trying to get it to do what you want, how can we simplify the tool that you're building down to the absolute minimum so that the agent can do 99% of the work and all you have to do is supply the API keys? We teased back then what we call one shot, which was the ability to put a prompt and then after 10 to 15 minutes have an actual working tool. That eventually failed because when we actually had it ready and were ready to launch it, we realized, okay, in order for this to be successful, we have to optimize for this magic moment. Like Lovable has perfected this, where from your prompt until you see code was like 15 seconds, at least back in the days. I don't know how they do it now, but we had to optimize for the magic moment. And when you hit send on the prompt in one shot, you were basically looking at a loading screen for 15 minutes. And that was not magic. The tool worked at the end, but it was not magic because you were just sitting there looking at a loading screen for 15 minutes. But we learned so much about this because we realized, okay, we can take all the load off of the user and actually launch a working tool within 15 minutes. That then became the foundation of Riff, where we thought, okay, how can we actually do this, but in a much, much better way? And then over a few months, we did a lot of thinking about, okay, should we redesign DataButton and relaunch as Riff? Or should we launch an entirely new platform? We had a lot of very big things we wanted to build that would be easier to build on a platform built from the ground up. And that was automations in your tools. It was the cloud agent, and then it was one-click integrations. So what we eventually decided to do is, okay, we will not use DataButton as our foundation for Riff. We'll rebuild it. So actually what most people don't know is that Riff, as we launched it the other day, did not exist 3 weeks ago. There was nothing 3 weeks ago. There was literally nothing. And the first time they introduced Riff to the team, it was just a shell. There were no colors, there were no nothing. The UI was a mess, but the product freaking worked. And then we hired a product designer, like a full stack creative, who actually jumped in and made the product feel the way it feels today, which is amazing. Like you just put in your prompt, you choose your integrations, you see a loading screen for 2 minutes, you see what's going on, and then you jump straight into the tasks, which is very small tasks, And you can even tell the agent, just go through all of them and it'll be done in 4 minutes. And then you have a fully working tool after 8 minutes, which is amazing. And I think one of the best things that we did was introducing native integrations. If you have ever built a tool where you want to integrate something, could be Google Calendar, you probably know that's a very long process. You have to go in a lot of different places and set up a lot of different things. But now it's one click. You choose your permissions, and then that's it. It's like the integration part on your end is 3 to 5 seconds. The agent will do the rest. So yeah.
I've personally played with Riff. You guys did a pretty good job with the pre-launch, posting some videos and announcing that there was something new coming on. I'm in the newsletter. I'm also a bit of a DataButton, now Riff fanboy, because I've been following you guys since the very beginning. Once we had the directory and I discovered we were looking for tools every week. And back in in January or February, we already discovered DataButton and we listed it on the best Asian directories. And ever since, we've had Martin coming to the podcast, which was a great conversation. So I was excited for Riff. I played it with it this weekend. First, as you were saying, first input, first output, pretty surprising. Now I'm tweaking to see how far can I push it because I want to add more complexity to it. And I'm actually having fun. What I wanted to deep dive now is into how are users interacting with DataButton and now Riff. You said that 30% of the volume comes from people that work in companies and they want to build internal workflows or internal little solutions. What are the 3 most requested apps or internal workflows that you have seen within your DataButton? Because you're the one at the forefront interacting with all these clients. So what are the workflows that you see there that are most common?
Actually, a very difficult question because every single person is building slightly different tools. We do have categories of, for example, if you don't want to pay for Calendly anymore, you can build a calendar booking app. We also have one of our most successful tools is an AI intercom or support chat upsell listener. So it's listening for upsell signals in support chats, and then it pings the salespeople in Slack. And then the salespeople jump into the support chat while the conversation is still ongoing and actually upselling. It's one of the guys, Marius from our team, who built that. And we increased our revenue by $60,000 in 2 weeks. So like you can build, and I think nobody would have thought about that. But the fact that you can have the idea and build something in 2 hours and have it actually generate real results is the amazing thing. So it's hard for me to say what exactly other people should build because it really depends on their job. It depends on what do they do at their work? What is something they do every day or every week or every month that takes a lot of time that you just don't want to do? Start there.
And we then... Yeah. Oh, sorry, finish.
No, go ahead.
Can we then broaden it to, instead of which are the 3 most requested workflows, which are the 3 departments within a company that request? Is it workflows or little apps for marketing, for sales, for operations, finance? What is it?
Yeah, we see pretty clearly marketing, sales, and operations. This is where the biggest gains are. Whether it's A/B testing tools or tools to do lead qualification, or there are so many things that you can build, basically. And it comes down to the creativity of the individual. Yeah.
Actually, I have one question regarding churn. So at some point you were mentioning that it's very important that you grow, but also you keep your customers, because otherwise, if customers are not happy, they leave and you have no business. So what I see is that nowadays, when you are building an app, it's super painful to maintain it. So if you have someone else because we feel very empowered as well with Nacho, we have thought of, okay, let's build just this app for us. And many times we end up ditching the idea because it's just a pain to maintain the app. And also if there's bugs, just keep fixing the bugs. So in the end, we end up paying for this monthly subscription of this traditional provider. So I was wondering, have you seen how do Riff clients handle this? Are they experiences maintenance issues? They do not. Like what's going on there?
We have two different customers now in the Riff for Work. One is the people who build tools themselves. We see that when they finish a tool, there's close to zero maintenance needed because the tool will not change over time. The code is literally written. Like you don't have to change anything. The integrations are there. Everything just works. But for those needing more complex workflows, we have now the ability to actually hire Riff developers to build your internal tools for you and also maintain them and update them over time. And that's a really powerful solution because a lot of people want the speed of AI, but they don't have the time or the desire to actually learn how to use a vibe coding tool. So yeah, that's the two things we see. But I think it would actually be really cool how about I demo the platform for 2 minutes or 5 minutes?
Yeah, sure.
Okay, cool. All right. So I think what we'll do is try to build a simple calendar booking tool. We can use that every day, right? So what I'll do, I'll put in a simple prompt, build me a calendar booking system like Calendly. We need Google Calendar integration. Keep it simple. Yeah, let's go with it.
I love when everyone is going glassmorphic. Sorry to interrupt. Everyone is going glassmorphic after the Apple iOS, and you added these little metallic iron-filled buttons. Love it.
We're going very retro.
I like it.
Okay, so what we have in the new here is we have this Riff card, which is basically a summary of what we're going to build. So a meeting booking system, a booking page where visitors can view available time slots and schedule meetings automatically synced to Google Calendar. So it'll display time slots, allow visitors to select time slots, calendar events in Google Calendar, send confirmation to both host and a visitor, and an admin view. Super simple, right? So we just hit build.
Sounds about right.
And then now is this loading screen that we took previously 15 minutes. We took it down to 1 to 2 minutes. And then you can see it working basically. Now it's doing all the setup, so all the basic things.
It's actually cool how you did these 5 little steps and it goes one by one. So mentally it's okay. We're like, you can see if you're like halfway there and what's happening in the back.
Yeah.
So that's pretty cool.
And it's
how
going
are you guys
really fast.
Yeah. It moves on pretty fast. Yeah. How are you guys doing credits? How are users managing credits? Because you said Lovable does it one way, Pod does it one way. How are you? Has it something changed from DataButton to Riff?
We stick to the same credit model where 1 credit is 1 successful code write. You don't pay per message. You don't pay per task because tasks can vary in size and messages can vary in size. You pay for successful code writes. So whenever you make a change in your code base, that actually gives you progress towards the finished tool is when you pay for a credit. Okay, so what we have now is a very simple meeting schedule. I'll say, let's change the app to black background and dark theme elements. Then what we have here, we have the tasks. So we have 3 tasks of 5 tasks in total. The agent has completed the first 2. Task number 2 is Google Calendar, and then some APIs and some endpoints to do the database. Okay, and I don't know if you can hear it, but every time the agent is done or needs your attention, it will actually give you a ping. So it'll say pling, and then you know that you have to come back to check the chat. We now have a tab-based interface so that you can go in here and check your database. You can do integrations and so on.
There you go.
So what we'll do here, this looks pretty nice, right? we'll just go ahead and say, we can either start here and say start task number 2, but what I actually want to do is say, please start task 2, and you don't need to confirm with me when you're done. Just keep going through all the tasks. Now we can see how fast it's actually working when you let it, right? Because we obviously have some constraints, like we don't want the agent to just go through it all. But if you want, then now it's available. Before you had to click buttons to finish tasks and so on. Now, this is the new one-click integration with Google. So we'll click here. We go to a modal where we see our login, and then we allow Riff to see different things, right? Like calendar and so on. And this was literally it. That was the integration part. Now, obviously, Riff has to go and actually implement it, but we don't have to do anything now. What we'll hopefully see is that slowly our tool will become functional. So right now, what I think is happening is just showing mock data.
We start seeing the different new elements and everything.
Yeah. So let's test it now. And what I expect is that nothing is going to happen. And that's still okay. It might say this, but it didn't actually work. That's because the agent hasn't set up everything yet. But it'll go one by one, create the API modules, and it'll run through everything basically. And at some point when it's done with the integration, you'll see these 3 probably take just 1 minute in total. And then eventually it'll also set up the database where we'll have some tables in here. But right now
I have
think...
a question.
Yeah, go ahead.
Whilst this loading, and just to add a little bit of discussion here, with all these AI tools enabling, creating, and replicating existing SaaS in a morning or an afternoon, depending on the complexity of the SaaS, where do you think the VC money is going to be in 2026?
Really, I think those people or those founders who build something with real demand, solving real problems, is the one who's going to get the VC funding. Everything is really hyped up right now. I don't really endorse it because a lot of investor money will go lost. But at the end of the day, investors need to remember that please just invest in companies solving real problems. And that's what we'll...
Totally agreed. Sorry for the interruption. We're here half demo, but it just came up to me like, if you can replicate Calendly this easy, we've seen these Lovables and Riffs being able to replicate like your own custom CRM for your company. This makes me think what's happening with the big SaaS out there, depending on how they pivot or not, they might have their days counted. To make it a little controversial over here. Let's get back to the demo because we see a lot of things happening and I feel like it's almost there.
Yeah. So right now it's creating the APIs to manage availability settings. You can click tasks to actually see what's going on. So here's the base task. And then here's what the agent is doing. So every time the agent does something, it's documenting what it's doing. And this helps the agent basically stay on track. And what we also see the agent is doing is actually testing everything. And obviously you still as a user have to actually test it and try and book. In this case, let's see what's actually going on. Okay, the API is working. The API requires authentication. Okay. Then we go in code editor, availability, enable authentication. And we also enable authentication in the homepage. What this does is that now you will be asked to log in. That is a pretty cool thing. Like then the person who is actually building the tool can also collect information about whoever is. Yeah. And then we could even build in the fact that your login information will be automatically put into the tool. And now it's testing again. Let's see if it's working.
I have one question.
Yeah.
Once this product is finished, how much does it cost for the user to host? In the end, you're hosting it, right? So how much does the user has to pay for it?
You actually don't pay for hosting or the database. It's all included inside of the credits that you have. So my account is on 10,000 credits. That's equal to basically.
But I guess you have to pay a monthly subscription fee or something.
You obviously pay for a monthly subscription, which gives you access to credits. And the hosting and the database is included in those credits. In that way, all the database you build on DataButton or Riff, is actually 100% free. Okay. Looks like...
Then I guess I can add my own domain and so on to have it under whatever domain I decide to buy.
Let's see where we are.
Where can you see your credit count again? Because in DataButton it was in bottom right.
Yeah,
where you saw how many credits you had left.
We moved it to the top left, just to declutter the. We want to declutter the whole chat experience, and we obviously over time improving how we're showing the chat. So we're experimenting with a lot of different things, getting a lot of good feedback from our customers, basically. Now it's working on the create event function, which is what we need to actually generate the event. So let's see. What we built is a meeting booking app where you can go ahead and pick a time and then confirm booking. And then you will use this software instead of the software like Calendly, for example. Yeah.
Sweet. That's a pretty clear example of how you can actually substitute $20 a month SaaS for something built on your own with a few credits. Thank you so much for the demo, Milo. We have a closing tradition with a few of fire questions that we then collect and put in a few leaderboards on a new website that we are soon to launch. First question is, one book you would recommend?
Diary of a CEO by Stephen Bartlett, and a runner-up, which was a big unlock in my own founder career, was the $100 Startup. Yeah.
Agreed. I read that one. I really liked it. And actually, shout out to Stephen Bartlett, because I see that you have a mission, Milo, to actually run into him. We are both also big fans of Stephen Bartlett. I listen to his podcast every week. So yeah, maybe eventually one day in the future, we'll be able to see us talking about him. And last question. If there's any kids, which I don't think so, listening to this podcast, tune out, because there is a fuck, marry, kill round with AI tools. Of course, Riff is not involved in this game. So a fuck, marry, kill for different AI tools. Which ones would you choose?
Which AI tool I would do what?
Fuck, marry, kill. So it would be like fuck is like something you would play around with like for an afternoon. Marry, a tool that you would want to use forever, and kill, an AI tool that you would want to make it disappear.
I think the first one, Cluely. Second one, we're playing around with a tool called Gleep. Gleep.
How do you spell that?
GLEAP.io. And then...
Okay. Go for it. Say Lovable. Kill Replit. Okay, fair enough. Okay, and before we go, I really wanted to ask this question. Would you say Claude Code, Codex, Gemini CLI, are these direct competitors to these vibe coder apps? Do you fear them as competitors, or are they out of the scope for more technical people? I'm asking because I'm not technical and I'm starting to play with Claude Code. So what are your thoughts there?
I think what we optimize for is the non-technical people working at tech companies. They don't want to see code. They don't want to touch code. They don't want to know. They don't want to need to know what they need to do with the code that is generated. They just want it to work. So we don't see these code generators as direct competitors, like Cursor. Cursor is for developers. Lovable is for founders. Riff is for work, basically. Yeah.
One last question, very quick. So imagine it's January 2027. Riff has been acquired, what's the next step for Milo?
For Milo, probably build my next startup. Yeah,
Fair enough. Fair enough.
absolutely.
Thank you very much, Milo. It was great having you here. Thank you much for the conversation. And thank you everyone for tuning in. Bye-bye.
Bye.